What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Bogey Free, presented by the Game Plus Network, as always. As you can probably tell, I am on my own tonight. So fun show ahead. We're going to dive into course fit. We're going to dive into some bets. And we're going to talk once more about the advantages of odds shopping and of, if you have access to them, each way bets, because all of it is just a really easy way to kind of gain an edge and to become a profitable bettor. The way that I like to look at it is just odds shopping and each way bets are sort of the low hanging fruit of the PGA betting world, and perhaps more powerful than in any other sport. And there are a lot of things you can do in PGA betting to become a profitable bettor, even as a casual bettor, than you can in other sports. So we're going to first dive into this course fit model for the Zozo Championship. This is a really fun one. I was a little bit concerned that only 2 years of data would lead to a not very predictive or powerful model. It's not the case. This is actually one of the stronger ones that we see, at least of any model that's built on just a limited data sample. Most of the other models that are even close to this strong have been around the PGA Tour for almost a decade. So this is a really cool, powerful model that we get to use this week. And it also just so happens to be one that I think is really, really advantageous for us in terms of the skill sets that are emphasized here. The first one, once again, strokes gained driving distance really pops. Over a third of the weight overall is going just to strokes gained driving distance. For any new listeners, here at FTN, we are able to separate distance and accuracy components within driving, which is a really cool thing that we have strokes gained driving distance and strokes gained driving accuracy. A lot of the time when we see strokes gained driving distance enhanced in weight, it doesn't come with a lack of predictive value for driving accuracy. This week it does. Driving accuracy only getting 3.6% of the weight, barely statistically significant at all. So this is definitely a course, it seems, where bombers can rejoice. And I think it's really important to note here, this is a predictive model. This is not saying that in the past, guys have gained the most strokes through distance, more so than accuracy. It can very well be the case that the guys who have played well here have driven the ball very accurately, and that is a key. What it tells us instead is that driving distance is more predictive of success. Some of the time, that means driving distance is actually more predictive of driving accuracy within the event than long-term strokes gained driving accuracy numbers. One of the reasons, or one example of how that could be the case, is you have certain holes on the golf course where having length sort of opens the fairway much wider for some players than others. This is particularly true when there are maybe fairway bunkers that need to be carried and the longest hitters can. Over the bunker, it opens up. Maybe you have 65 yards wide that you can hit if you have the distance to carry the bunker. And if you don't have the distance to carry the bunker, maybe you're having to fit the ball within a 40-yard wide fairway. So it can be true that distance is more predictive, even when that doesn't show in a descriptive manner. I'm not sure which is the case here, but it's really cool that we have the capability to say driving distance is what you want here. Also of note is the fact that a lot of the time when the course fit model emphasizes one aspect of driving so much, that tends to steal some predictive value from approach play, because your ability to gain strokes with approach is often dependent on your ability to gain strokes off the tee. That's not the case for driving distance or driving accuracy. Your ability to drive the ball, all you're doing is putting the tee in the ground. You don't have to set yourself up to drive the ball well. It's just a talent that you have. So it's very cool, once again, that approach play also has its typical predictive value here. And then we get into the short game and putting, and it's all short game, no putting. Another thing that I really, really love, because when I do all of my baseline models, it's become apparent to me that the industry as a whole does not value around the green play enough. It's a really, really key part of golf. And because it's just such a small part week to week, like the variation in scores is less to do with around the green play than a lot of the other stats within an event. People don't tend to weight it, but from a predictive standpoint, it really does have a long-term benefit. So I always love when the course fit model, the specific course fit model, I should say, also backs that up. We have that this week with around the green play, also taking on over a third of the weight overall. So we have distance really up. We have accuracy off the tee down. We have around the green play up. We have putting down, and then approach play right in line with the normal. What does this mean? It means this is a unique course fit model, and so we're going to get some unique course fits from a playing standpoint, and also some guys who really don't fit the course well. We can start with some really great fits for the course. Xander Schauffele comes in first in course fit expected strokes gained. No surprise there. He's very clearly the best player in the field. And actually, you can look through and you can see like his course fit expected strokes gained is not because he's a particularly strong fit for the course or that this course is a uniquely strong fit for him. It's just that he's that good. He does everything well, gains almost a third of a stroke, both driving distance and driving accuracy, gains over 0.8 of a stroke approach, a quarter of a stroke around the green, which is one of the better short games in this field and in the world, and then also gains a third of a stroke putting. So he's just awesome all around. That's why he's going to lead the field in course fit expected strokes gained this week. So I would not call him a specialist, but the guy second in course fit expected strokes gained is absolutely a specialist. That's Cameron Young. Gains over half a stroke per round in driving distance alone. I've made the point a lot on this show. He is now, I think, without question, the best driver of the golf ball in the world. Also gains half a stroke per round accuracy-wise. That doesn't really help him this week, but it's always nice when a guy can hit it really long and really accurately. And I think I'll recall another point that I've made on the past in this show, which is sometimes when the predictive value of driving distance or driving accuracy is so strong, it drowns out the other, where you might say, you know, a guy who relies on accuracy off the tee can't really boost himself just through accuracy if he's not long here. It still may be the case that if you are really long, it helps to be really accurate. I think it can never work against you, but even when the model doesn't say that driving accuracy is predictive, as long as the guy is long off the tee, it still is possible that accuracy is really beneficial. Of course, his other strength and sort of came out of nowhere last year. Like early in the season, he was not good around the green. And then throughout the second half of the year, he really showed he is one of the best short games in the world. So this is a phenomenal course fit model for him. Already want to buy low on him. He is second in my generic top 10 odds model, 30.3% to Xander Schauffele's 30.7. So that is a really, really strong number for him. The wins should come. He's also second in my projected expected wins, which is a data golf statistic, which basically refers to how often a guy has put himself in contention. And given the scores that he shot, what were his odds of winning that week? Like when somebody wins a tournament, it doesn't necessarily mean that he earned a full win. His performance may have only won in 33% of events on tour, in which case he'd be credited with 0.33 expected wins, even though he got the win. And Cameron Young is second in that metric this week. So I think the wins are going to come. That is also why he is my first outright bet of the week. I only have 2 outrights at the moment. I may add some more, but Cameron Young gets my first one. As I mentioned, 16-1 on basically any of the main sportsbooks, BetMGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, even a handful of others. So really love this bet for him. He just shouldn't be 16-1. He should be priced sort of alongside of Xander or even Sungjae in that range, not all the way down at 16 like he is. Moving down the list, I mentioned, he's a specialist, but we also have some, let's call them reverse specialists, if you will. Corey Connors is the first one who really stands out. He's fourth in this field in my baseline strokes gained model. Nowhere near that in the course fit expected strokes gained model. I believe he's somewhere around 14th or 15th in that number. And you can see why when you look at his baseline strokes gained profile. Gains very, very little at distance off the tee, almost 2/3 of his strokes gained off the tee, or actually gains almost 2/3 in strokes gained accuracy off the tee, just with his accuracy off the tee. A really, really strong number. And then also his biggest weakness is his around the green play. Loses 4/10 or 400ths, I should say, of a stroke per round around the green. So this is not the kind of course that's really going to benefit Corey Connors. I do believe he has some decent success here, and you can get back to the fact, like I said, he's probably the 4th best player in this field. So it certainly shouldn't surprise us if he plays well. It's just going to be harder for him to do that here than it would be on most other golf courses. Moving down the list, speaking of list, he is my next outright bet, as you probably saw. And this is just another really great spot for him. Unfortunately, we have not seen the short game prowess from him that we were accustomed to seeing basically his entire career. Really struggled around the green this past season. That knocks his baseline expected strokes gained with his around the green play under 0, actually now expected to lose just a tiny bit. But really, List does two things really well. He hits the ball a hell of a long way, gaining over 0.4 of a stroke per round with driving distance alone, and then gains about half a stroke per round. You can call it overall accuracy, gains about 0.2 per round with his driving accuracy and 0.3 per round with his approach play. So he's a ball striker through and through. And of course, just as important as the emphasis on driving distance to him is the de-emphasis or the complete lack of predictive value here for putting. List the worst putter in the field, expected to lose over half a stroke per round putting as a baseline projection. Pretty incredible to be that bad in one aspect and so good in some other aspects. But hey, that's how he's on tour. If he wasn't so awesome with his ball striking, he wouldn't be on tour with that kind of putting. And similarly, if he was a pretty good putter, he wouldn't ever be 100-1. He'd be 10 or 20-1 because he is that good with his ball striking. So when we put him on a golf course that really fits his skill set, he goes from a baseline expected strokes gained of just over half a stroke per round to almost 1.25 per round on this golf course, showing what a phenomenal fit he is. And of course, I also love the fact that, he is a fairly volatile player, and that works in his favor two ways. Number one, we can say the volatility is probably, number one, a product of his extreme strokes gain profile. He's going to have certain courses that really don't reward his skill set and punish his lack of putting prowess. And then on the other hand, he's going to get courses like this one that really reward his strengths and diminish his weaknesses. And then the other way that really works in his benefit is, hey, he's not one of the best players in this field. So the added volatility in his game will actually help him compete from a ceiling perspective with the best players in this field. That's why I really like the 100-1 number on him. As you saw in that screenshot, he is an each way bet for me. And for those unfamiliar, we've talked about it a number of times on the show, but I know there are new listeners, so I don't want to repeat myself too much and become a broken record. But the each way bet is really advantageous because it gives us just an odds advantage. And specifically this week, the each way that Bet Rivers offers is 1/5 of the odds for 6 spots. So we're getting a 20-1 bet on him for a top 6. When you compare that to the market odds for a top 5, for example, you can really see how powerful this is because the best available number for him for a top 5 is 16-1. So we're getting better odds, 20-1 versus 16-1, and we're getting an additional finishing position. That makes the each way bet extremely powerful. And like I said earlier, it's just a way that you can really pick some low-hanging fruit and become a profitable bettor. Just flip the script, become a profitable bettor just by betting in a really strategic way. You don't have to become better at picking the guys. Just find the best numbers, the best books that offer the best types of bets. And if you can find instances like this one with Luke List, where the best market value on his outright odds also offer an each way, it's just the best of both worlds, and it becomes icing on the cake, as I said in my betting preview. So these guys really just kind of fit the mold exactly what we want to do. And the other thing I would say here is I put in the betting preview article just yet another reminder of how important it is to odds shop. There are a handful of guys in this field where you're getting something like 45-1 odds in the outright market on one sports book and as low as 30-1 on others. And so I took the liberty of looking through some NFL lines ahead of the show. And my favorite example was Pittsburgh is a consensus plus 305 underdog this week. The worst line available is plus 290. The best available is plus 310. So we can directly compare that from a proportional standpoint to like the difference between 29-1 and 31-1. And yet here in the PGA market, we can get 30 to 45-1. Like imagine if you went onto the prop shop and you were searching through NFL odds, and on one sportsbook you saw 290 for Pittsburgh, and another you saw plus 310, and then there was this other at plus 450. How quickly would you run to that plus 450 number? That's the power of odds shopping in PGA. It really is that advantageous in this market. And again, like it's just such an easy way to turn things in your favor. You don't have to become better at picking the right guys. Just find the best way to lay the money on the guys you want to lay money on, and you can become a profitable bettor. The one thing I will say there is I do think a lot of the time that we see the odds discrepancies, it's less about some books just having the guy priced way too long and it's this huge edge for us, and more so it's that some books just said, hey, we don't know how to price this guy, let's just make it really aggressive so no one wants to bet on him, and they're kind of covering their ass that way instead of doing the work to really find the best available number. So it's not automatic that when you find the price discrepancy, you want to bet it. That's why I haven't yet pulled the trigger on somebody like Keegan Bradley this week or Sahith Theegala, who is the one that we can get 45-1 somewhere and only 30-1 elsewhere. I may add those guys, so follow the bet tracker throughout the week to see if I do that, and I will put that in chat if I do. But for the time being, I'm holding off. They're both right on the edge for me. I want to look a little bit more into particularly into their recent volatility. I know their long-term volatility, particularly Sahith Theegala's, is really, really favorable for an outright bet. I want to look more into his recent volatility, though, because he's still a young golfer and still has a smallish sample size. I don't want to trust the long-term volatility number quite as much as I would some other guys. I want to see if there's any trend, because I do recall in the past he was upwards of a 75 to 80 volatility score in Matt's volatility scores, and now he's down to 57. So I do want to check and see, is that telling us that he's become a little bit less volatile, in which case I wouldn't like him as much. We'll see. We'll dive into that a little bit more, and I will update the bet tracker with those numbers. And I want to check if we have any new questions in the chat. We do not. I was DM'd a few questions ahead of time, and the first was specifically about my course fit model. We do have some time here at the end of the show to really dive into this one. I think it's a useful conversation. Basically, the question was, why can we trust a course fit model that's built on course histories if I am not a fan of course history itself? This is a really great question, and it comes down to sample size. And essentially what it says is, I do believe, and I'm a professional golfer myself, so I certainly have played golf courses that I think really fit me better than others. But when you're looking for those specific fits, and you're just looking through a course history for a specific player, the sample size is so small that you have no way of knowing. Like, let's say a guy has a really strong course history or even a really bad course history on a course. You have no way of knowing if that strong or weak course history has been born out of randomness or born out of signal. And the only things that you can do to help answer that question are dive into the course fit. How is this course emphasizing his strengths, diminishing his weaknesses, or vice versa? In which case, just use the course fit yourself. So because we can't separate the signal from the noise in individual course histories based on the sample size, I tend to move away from it. Now, when you're looking at a large sample of players, like this week's course fit model is built on, I believe it was like 120 different players with limited course histories at this course, given just the 2-year sample. But now all of a sudden you have 120 guys in your sample. And so while some of them are going to be born out of randomness, there are also going to be a hell of a lot of those guys born out of signal. And the randomness should even out in different directions. So if one guy who has been really good or one guy who's really long off the tee has played poorly, that's going to be drowned out by all the guys who were rewarded by their distance here, since that's the signal we see. So really, really great question, and one that I wanted to touch on because it really gets to the heart of why our course fit model can be so powerful, because it takes something that has real theoretical value in course history and it solves the sample size issue, spits out a course fit, and then that course fit can be used in turn to support some course histories that you see. Like if you're looking at a player's course history and you see, hey, you know what? This guy has been outrageously good at this course 4 or 5 times. I'd like to see how he fits the golf course, see if that's supported by his course fit, and it's supported, then by all means, you can buy into that type of course history success. Whereas if the fit kind of goes against it, maybe there's still some signal there. Maybe the course benefits his shot shape, for example, or he just feels really good there for whatever reason. And excuse me, because he has built up that confidence over the years. He can play really well there again. I believe one instance that comes to my mind is there's a golf course through the year, I believe it's in Texas, that Ryan Palmer has played extraordinarily well. And year after year, we hear, oh, his course history is phenomenal. He's a local guy in Texas. And it always makes me chuckle because it's just the absolute perfect course fit model for him. And so everyone thinks, oh, he's a Texas boy. The course is in Texas. His course history is great. That's why he's playing well. No, it's because the course is just a perfect fit for his golf game. And so the field kind of gets rewarded for buying into noise, and they just so happen to also be on the right side of the signal there. Kind of a correlation versus causation argument, if you will, where the causation is the course fit, the correlation is the course history that they buy into. So really interesting discussion. And honestly, it's a conversation that I could have for hours and hours. It's such a fun one. And it is a conversation that I've had with a lot of the guys I've played against on mini tours. And whenever I mention that, hey, I do some data stuff for golf, it's like that they want to talk to me about it for the rest of the round. And that's a conversation that every single guy has with me. And it's always a fun one to return to. One other question I got was, when I'm looking for outright bets and for each way bets, what are some of the background things that I'm looking for? Not just course fit, but the other things I'm looking for. As I've talked about a bunch, I have these baseline projected top 10 rate models, a baseline expected win rate model and win rate model. And then I also have the volatility scores, and those kind of go hand in hand. I don't want to ever double count something. For example, Cameron Young has been one of the more volatile players. And because of that volatility, he has been in contention a lot. And because of that volatility, he has finished top 10 a lot. So I don't want to double count it by saying not only has he finished top 10 a bunch, but he's also really volatile. Those things are, of course, related, but he fits the profile all around. And then the other thing I would say here gets back to a discussion we've also had previously on the show. For anyone who hasn't heard this, I was able to show that there is a real skill in winning, and particularly what we see is when running models trying to predict future win rates, it actually helps more to include past win rate than simply the rate at which a player gets himself into contention. So there's sort of this, I wouldn't say narrative, but idea that like in other sports where in NFL we are relying more on volume statistics than efficiency statistics, like we're looking at target share, for example, instead of just receptions per game. There's sort of an expectation in golf that it's similar, that somebody who has been in position to win a lot is going to win more than somebody who has won a lot previously but hasn't put themselves in position as often. And that was kind of disproven by the data, particularly guys like Sam Burns, Cameron Smith. They have proven that when they put themselves in position, they have the skill to get it done. And one thing there is the directionality in this conversation matters. In other words, we can say that somebody who historically has won a lot more than we would expect, that they do have that skill. We can't, however, say that somebody who has been in contention a lot and hasn't been able to close the door does not possess that skill and will not be able to win in the future. We saw that with a handful of guys last year, honestly, like Scotty Scheffler came into the season sort of with the narrative that he can't quite get it done, he can't win. What did he do? He won 3 times really early in the season. Tony Finau had a similar stretch late in the season where as soon as he won once, he won again. And so that's sort of about the probability involved. So remember that, even when a guy goes into the final round, for example, with a lead, he's still unlikely to win. It's still maybe 15, 20%. Those are all the thoughts we've got for this week. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.